This interview is brought to you by Burned Up Coaching and the 21-Day Transformation. So if you are someone who's been sick and tired of being sick and tired, you're not happy with your results, you're making excuses, you're blaming, or you're just not performing at the level that you know you're capable of, you dream of big dreams, but you keep falling short, you keep not executing, you're not clear, you're not sure what's going wrong, it's just not working, then this program is for you. And if you are someone who wants to achieve your results in a year or 6 months or even 90 days, this program's not for you. This program is for you if you are committed to breaking through your BS and in 21 days achieving your goal, because I will be working with you one-on-one every step of the way to make sure that you're empowered, you're fired up, you're taking those actions to be and become your greatest possible self, dialing in the habits, dialing in the rituals, tracking yourself, your stats, your growth, your ability to succeed, and making sure that you're empowered every step of the way, not falling off the track. And if you do, I help you get right back on track. That's through one-on-one coaching multiple times a week and daily check-ins to make sure that you're fired up and crushing it. So if you're interested, send me a message, get a hold of me somehow, Facebook, whatever the way is, and let me know that you're interested, and I can send you an application so that you can fill that out. And if it's a good fit, we'll set up a call, and I'm looking for 2 people. So if you make the cut, great. If not, no hard feelings. I can send you some other resources or someone else who might be a better fit for you. So take action on that and get in contact with me if you're interested. Now, there is also an iTunes review of the week for people who love this show, because we always get 5-star reviews. Just kidding. Well, so far we have. And, I'm open to another possibility if that comes. And this is from 17th Try. 17th Try said, "I loved this insight. I've heard people say before things like, don't wait until you're ready, you'll never be ready. I loved your twist on that. If you'll never be ready, you'll also never be not ready. Your energy is powerful. I look forward to hearing more episodes of your show." So thank you, 17th Try. We appreciate you. Thanks for sending that review. And if you love the show or you want to give us feedback, give us a comment. I read all the reviews and would love to shout you out on one of the 12-hour marathons. You can do that at beyourgps.com/iTunes. Or search on iTunes for Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self, or leave us a review on Facebook. We appreciate that as well. Joie Cheng, M.S.W., the queen of transformational book publishing, is passionate about helping people write and publish their books so they can make the income and impact they desire and deserve. She believes that when we share our stories, we heal ourselves and we heal the world. Joy is a Patrick Snow certified publishing coach, author, speaker, mentor, healer, circle facilitator, and trained yoga teacher. She is the best-selling author of The Naked Truth, a woman's journey to self-love, about her personal journey of healing herself naturally from deep depression and suicidal thoughts through self-love. Joy, are you ready to rock this?
Yeah, let's do it.
We're doing it. Oh my goodness gracious. I love your blue and white background. It's kind of like my blue or my white and red, but the blue side. So it's your cool.
We're patriotic.
That's together. Right. That's right. Red, white, and blue. Woo!
Yes.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on today. We are going to have a great conversation, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're diving right into the topic of the day, the theme of the day, which is freedom to choose. So Joy, how does this concept of freedom to choose show up in your life? How is it important to you, and how has it made a difference for you?
Well, I love this topic. I think that, it can be easy to think that things are happening to us rather than for us, and to think that we don't have choices when we really do, right? We are always at choice. So whatever is happening, we get to choose. We don't get to necessarily choose sometimes what happens, but we get to choose how we respond. So I think that's where the choice comes from, is that, we can't control everything that happens, but we can control how we respond to it. And that is the freedom.
And how important is it, do you think, that people are wise with their choice in responding?
How important is it? I mean, it's really important. I think that because, we have all heard about the law of attraction, right? But the truth is, it's working whether or not we're aware of it. We're always attracting things to us through our thoughts. So since that's the case, we might as well choose our thoughts so that we can choose, what happens, to, more likely like the outcome that we want, rather than just, let whatever happens happen, and not feel like we have any choice in it.
Beautiful, beautiful. I 100% agree, and I love the freedom to choose, because it's literally, we're the creator. We step into that creator, the playground of life, the game of life. We get to make up the rules. We get to make up the whole, play, and the whole arena, what's going to happen. And again, it's how we respond to it. We may not be able to necessarily control what happens to us or the circumstances, but we can definitely control our response. So I 100% agree with that, and we are the masters of our reality. So Joy, tell us a little bit more about what you're working on today. And you mentioned I mentioned a lot of different things that you're doing today, book publishing, circle, right, and healing, and circle facilitator. I was like, what is a circle facilitator? So just let us know what you're working on and what you got going on.
Yeah, so I have had a lot of trainings. I have a lot of passions, a lot of things that I've done and been interested in. And the thing that I am most passionate about now is helping people to share their stories, to get their book out, to leave their legacy. So that is, the main thing is the people that I'm working with, my private clients, as well as working on launching my second edition of my book. And and then we've got a podcast knocking on my door.
Knocking on your door?
Yes. So
Cool. Well, I'm sure you'll be able to talk a little bit more about that at the end and what we can be excited for. I'm curious, why did you decide to do a version 2 of the book?
Well, so one of my mentors, actually, Patrick Snow, that I'm certified with as well. I think one of his mentors actually said that, instead of, some people, what they do is they write a book, then they market it for about 30 days, and, they, sell some copies, but they don't, maybe like 100 or something. They don't really sell that many. And then they are like, well, that didn't really work out, so I'm going to write another book, right? And they do it again. And, the thing is, it's like, you got to look at it like, and I actually, before I even heard this from my mentor, I actually had that experience with my own book where I felt like I equate it to the birth process. You are like, you're birthing your book. And so it's like having a baby where, you think about it, it takes 9 months to have a baby, and then you take the next 18 years to raise that child, right?
Right.
So a book is like that, even, except it's even more. It's okay. So maybe it takes you 3, 6, 9 months, whatever, a year to write your book. And then you spend the rest of your life, raising that book up, like marketing that book. And really, a successful book is 5% writing and 95% marketing.
Totally.
So I think that's the key. That's what has helped my mentor to sell millions of copies of his books, is because he's got 2 books and he basically has just done multiple editions, of them. And so he recommends that you actually just write one book. You write a decent book. It doesn't have to be the world's greatest. I mean, that's why they call it a best-selling author, not a best writing author, because you don't have to be the greatest writer. But you just write a decent book, and then you just revise it every year. You make new editions, you add new chapters, new stories. So my plan is actually, because I know that this podcast is, again, knocking on my door, that to just make it easier, and, repurposing is what it's really about, right? So, I'm going to take the interviews that I'm doing on my podcast, and then I'm going to just add some of those into my book every year, so that I have different stories and feature different people. And the cool thing too is then the book kind of evolves with you, right? Because that's one of the things, that the drawback of having a book in the print is that once it's done, and it's like, it's there solid, sort of in that frozen in time, right? Where we are continually evolving. So that's the cool thing about a podcast, is that it is evolving with you and it's evergreen. But you can do that like with a book. You can just revise it every year. I mean, think about some of the greatest books out there. I mean, there's multiple editions, right? So yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Awesome. I love that perspective. I had no idea about revising books. I just, we see them getting revised and stuff, but you never know why there's a revision or what the mindset is behind it. So that's awesome. It's good insight. I don't think most people know why revisions happen, or what we could do in our own revisions of our books to make it relevant and, add more value and bring it back into awareness and relevancy. So let's dive back into the journey, because you're doing all these amazing things. You got the podcast knocking on your door. You've written the book. You had a successful career. So let's go back into, the journey. What were some of those challenging moments and defining moments that had you get to where we are today? Writing the book. This topic is vulnerability is sexy. So let's start diving back into that journey that shaped that perspective that we would say vulnerability is sexy.
Yeah, well, so I won't take you too far back, but I'll take you back to my 20s. I actually went through a long period of deep depression and suicidal thoughts. So, there were days where it was really hard to get out of bed, and I would cross this bridge on the way to work. And I would often think, I wonder what would happen if I jumped off this bridge. And so it was a really, obviously a dark time in my life. It was also very confusing though, because I had nothing going on like on the outside that would make it seem like I should feel that way. It wasn't like something like terrible had happened. It wasn't like I had gone through a horrible breakup or I had lost somebody close to me. Things were good in my life. I had a good job. I had family and friends that cared about me. I was in a relationship. But I don't know, something I just felt, this like emptiness inside, this, I honestly couldn't imagine like growing old, because I couldn't imagine living that long. And so it was really hard. And then I ended up in an abusive relationship. So to kind of make it, worse, but that actually was the greatest gift, because it made me realize that I didn't love myself. I really didn't know that, before I ended up in that relationship. And when I was in that relationship, I started thinking, well, I must not love myself, because if I did, I wouldn't be in this relationship and continually stay in it. I was in it for 4.5 years on and off. And I ended up going to a seminar for the healing modality that I do with my clients sometimes, called Matrix Energetics.
Okay.
And that really just opened me up to different possibilities. I started realizing that I had certain beliefs that were putting conditions on my happiness. So I had a belief that, if I got married, I'd be happier. And I also had a belief that if I was single, I'd be miserable. And so I just started questioning those beliefs. I thought to myself, how do I know that getting married is going to make me happier? There's probably a lot of people that are married that are unhappy, right? And how do I know that, being single is going to make me miserable? What if being single was the best thing that ever happened to me? So just by flipping those beliefs, it really created a space for possibility, for other possibilities, and gave me that courage to finally end that relationship, and to realize, okay, I need to end this relationship. I need to learn to love myself. And I'm just going to, because I had gone from one relationship to another before that, and had kind of a history of staying in relationships for a long time and really not being happy, but not having the courage to leave because I was afraid of being alone. And so once I recognized that pattern and knew that I needed to make a change, I said, okay, I'm just going to learn to, be single and be happy being single, and then not start dating someone until the only reason I'd want to date somebody is to get to know them better, not because of anything that they could do for me out of a need of, a fear of being alone. And so then I started attracting, opportunities into my life to help me learn to love myself. And I started, living my purpose. And so I believe that those were the two things that then helped me heal from the depression and the suicidal thoughts.
What is your purpose?
Well, I am a healer. I believe we actually all are healers. We all have healing abilities. We all have the ability to heal ourselves, heal other people. We are all psychic. We all have psychic abilities. Some of us are just more aware of them. My main psychic ability is I feel energy. So I'm clairsentient. And so that's one of my purposes. I have multiple, but I think overall that's what I'm here to do is to help heal the world. And I do that through the book publishing. That's actually a tool for transformation for people, I believe.
Wow. Being able to express yourself or go through that, like you said, that birthing process of taking what happened and putting it into a book, like learning how to say it, share it, communicate it in a way that doesn't cause you to break down or, cause you to just not be able to function. Because I think a lot of people, when they think about their past, their dysfunctional past, their past that hurt and was painful, it causes them to shut down, causes them to just check out of life, out of conversations, out of relationships, whatever it might be. So I think it's important that we do that and are able to healthily express ourselves. So your book and helping people write their books is such a powerful amplifier of challenging ourselves to heal the past and forgive ourselves of the past and let go and move through to our future of what we're committed to creating.
Yeah. And I think that is the thing that sometimes is, people are afraid because they're like, well, if I write my story, I have to go back into that painful time in my life. And I wish I could say that you don't, but it's like, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And that's why I think having someone, a coach to guide you through that process, and someone like me, maybe that is not only a coach, but a healer that has that, I also hold that space and I can clear any energy blocks and really, because I've been through the process, I know what it's like. And, the truth is, whatever you've been through, I mean, you're going to probably go through that again. And that's, for me, that was what I call a very dark night of the soul. I actually went through that when I was writing my book, where I had a night where I had those thoughts of killing myself again. And I had those thoughts since, that time in my life, but there was never an energy behind it. So it would just be like a fleeting thought, like, maybe I'm going to kill myself. And like a minute later, split second later, be like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like there just wasn't an energy, but this time there was. And so, it kind of scared me, to be honest. And I was sitting like in my bathroom, praying to God, saying, God, like, what's the gift in this? Because I do believe that there's always a gift. And so I asked that question, and the answer that I got was that I was going through that to connect to the people in my life, the people out there who are feeling that way right now, who are considering killing themselves. And so that I could, be brought sort of back to that time in my life when I felt that way, to better connect to them. And I haven't had, that same energy behind it since then, and even the thought of it. But so, yeah, and I think that it can be scary, but it makes you realize like how strong you really are. And that, because I was like, well, why is this happening? I've done so much work on myself. But then I'm like, no, I know there's a gift here. So it's like, okay, why is this happening? What's the gift?
Yeah.
The what's the gift is better than the why is it happening question. So if you're in that place of like, why is this happening? I would encourage you to, reframe that question to ask, what's the gift? Because there is always a gift.
What role did vulnerability play in your transcending through your challenge and your pain?
I think it definitely played a big part. I mean, I didn't necessarily plan to get to be naked on my book cover, and to like, it was an evolution, and really like, the book, people have told me like, wow, you're so brave to be naked on your book cover. And I, usually I tell them, well, to be honest, it was scarier to be naked in the book. Like I bare my soul in my book, and wow. I was like, I can't write a book called The Naked Truth and then not be really honest and, not like bare at all. So, and that was really important for me, because I feel like, someone asked me on an interview, like, is it more healing to write your story or to publish it? I was like, well, I think there is a healing aspect in writing it, but there is such a different level when you put it out there in the world. It really, like, there's that freedom and peace in knowing, like, when you just put yourself out there, like, okay, I don't have anything to hide now, I'm free from, it doesn't matter what people think, because I've put it out there, and it's not about what people think anyways, right? It's you write it for yourself, but when you are able to write it from that place, you're going to help so many people because they can relate to it,
Wow. It's powerful. So I love that vulnerability has been, a process in the book. You put it on the cover. You were vulnerable on the cover. Where do you think most people, fall short, or our listeners of authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs, people who are listening right now? Where do you think that listener might be falling short in terms of vulnerability, or what's a different way that they could frame it or look at it to really get access to the power of vulnerability? And now that I'm thinking about it, why do we want to be vulnerable?
Right. Well, so it's funny, because I think that vulnerability is the thing that a lot of us are scared of, right? It's scary. It's scary to be vulnerable, because we're afraid of getting hurt. But then the truth is, I think that vulnerability leads to connection, and connection is what we all really want. Right. It's interesting, because it's like, it's the thing that can scare us the most. And it's also the thing we probably most want. So when we're able to, and in my experience, whenever I've been vulnerable, I've never had someone go like, I've never had like a negative response, like, oh my God, like, I can't believe you said that. I don't know, like, it's always been so positive. And you see people post vulnerable things on Facebook, and it's like, all you get is so much love, right? But we're so scared of the rejection. And yet the truth is, usually we never do actually get that rejection when we're willing to be vulnerable.
What were the steps that you took to be vulnerable, to be more and more vulnerable? How did you start off not vulnerable and closed off and afraid of sharing yourself, your real self? And what were the steps that you took to start getting more courageous with that?
Yeah, so I think, and actually a big part of my self-love journey has been in community.
Mm,
I think that when you're in that depressed state, it is hard to reach out, but um, part of my path was through community, not necessarily just in person, virtual communities as well.
hmm.
But a big part of it was women's circles, where I found myself in a circle of women at a beach in Mexico, and had no clue what I was doing there. But I felt called to go. And then,
Wow.
they were passing this rock around. And when you get the rock, it's your turn to just talk and share whatever's on your mind. And so when I was in that circle, it's like I had this experience like, wow, we're really all the same, right? Like when I heard
Mm,
somebody else sharing, I'm like, wait, so I'm not the only person that has this crazy person inside my head with these thoughts, right? Like,
yep.
so it just makes you realize that we're underneath it all, we're the same, right?
Mm,
And so, yeah, I think that, having a safe space where you're able to be vulnerable is really important, where you have people that you can share your vulnerability with. And what's really powerful when you're in a circle is that people are able to just share, and then nobody gives you any kind of advice or feedback, like, oh, you should do this, or it's just a space to be held like in love and however you show up.
mm.
And so that was a really big part of it was that support. And then, I mean, to be honest, it's a practice, right? It's an ongoing thing. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect and, I have no fears of ever saying anything vulnerable. But like, it's just, just continuing to take those steps to put yourself out there. So whether it's through posts and Facebook Lives or, it's just the more you do it, the easier it gets.
How do we know what to share?
Well, I think a good thing to ask yourself is, what do I not want to share? Right? What am I afraid to share? Like, I had to, actually, I've done things where it literally is like, because I never thought I would do something like that, I've actually been like, okay, now I have to do that. Or because, if I
Wow.
actually, so an example would be pole dancing. I had a friend that asked me to go to a pole dancing class. And my first thought was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I was like, that felt like a bit too much out of my comfort. And then I'm like, wait a second. Because
Mm,
I've done all this personal development work, I'm like, I know that, okay, if there's resistance, if that's something I really don't want to do, then that's exactly the thing that I need to do.
wow.
So I went and did that. And of
Wow.
course, it wasn't as scary as I thought.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah.
That's crazy. Huh. It's got me thinking. It's got me thinking. I used to be, so like since we're in the topic of vulnerability, let's like dive in because I was excited about this because when there's a context of like there's a safe space and there's a good container, which is what we have right now, and this is my show, so I can do whatever I want. It's like it's awesome, right? um,
Right.
so for a while, like I was concerned about my sexual orientation, right? Like I was like, I don't know, like am I gay, am I straight, like no judgment, LGBT, whatever you are, all cool. But for me, I was like afraid of being gay. And like I think one of the things that I was afraid about is like what would people think about me. And obviously I have an amazing girlfriend now and she's awesome and I totally know I'm straight. and I think that there's these different energies that like come up in us. There's masculine energy, there's feminine energy, which attract the opposite, right? Regardless of what gender, quote unquote, you are. We have both energies. So one thing I've been afraid of is like putting makeup on, right? Like I always felt like makeup is a very feminine thing that makes people uncomfortable if a guy is wearing makeup. Like I always felt like uncomfortable if I saw it on Instagram or whatever it might be. But I think it'd be fun just to like break through that fear of having makeup on and do like a Facebook Live.
Yeah. Yeah. I say go for it, and you can tag me in it if you want. Yeah.
So, but it's like so weird, like these thoughts that we have, the things that we're resistant to, right? Like I already right now I'm thinking in my mind, I'm not going to do that. Like I'm not going to do that. It's like totally not going to do it. But then I'm like, well, if I'm really I don't want to do it, and I'm thinking about what will everyone think and da 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 da, then that's like a breakthrough. And my mind went to, well, what if you start doing it all the time? What about all these other like fears that could happen? Just blowing it out of proportion, that survival
Right.
fear mechanism that just goes to town on us. So I'm curious like what your thoughts are on anything I just shared, and just
Yeah, well, I think that the things that the thing is, if we're afraid of something, then it has power over us,
Mm,
right? So,
mm,
like, that's part of that. I think the freedom to choose and taking your power back is that when you're able to do something that you're afraid of, then it no longer has power over you,
hmm
And um, yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think that our egos, our egos don't like change, so that's why when we want to do something that is outside of our current awareness and our comfort zone, then it freaks out, right? But the
mm,
truth is, once you do it, then you've expanded your comfort zone. So our comfort zones aren't like it's not something that stays the same, right? It
mm.
changes as we evolve, and
Wow.
yeah. Well, I just
Incredible.
wanted to say, like, thank you so much for being willing to share that. And I actually can relate to that actually in a way, because I sort of had that fear of like maybe like being a lesbian, and
Hmm
my dad was transgendered, and I don't think it's not like a genetic thing that I
hmm
know of, and it's not even the same thing, but I had that fear as well. And I was like, I think the truth is, like, I believe that there is a spectrum, right, of
mm
sexuality. So
hmm
some people are very much on one end or the other, and
hmm
then a lot of people are probably like not exactly on polar opposite ends, or
Right.
like they're sort of in the middle, or and so um yeah, and I think like you, there is that fear, but I'm like, no, I think at this point, like I would know that, like it's not something that it just all of a sudden, because I'm like, well, maybe one day it'll just happen, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, but I don't think that's really how it works. Like people, everyone that I know that is gay, I mean, they pretty much kind of always knew that there was something different about them, and like
Right.
like it's not something you just wake up one day and like all of a sudden
Today
realize.
I feel like being gay.
Yeah, so.
No, yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm curious. What other things do you think most people are afraid of that if only that they would share it, be willing to share it, or you don't have to name any specifics, but if there's anything that you've seen about people that they tend to be afraid of admitting or sharing, is there anything like that you can for anyone who's listening who might be going through that, let's talk about entrepreneurship, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs on here. Some common things that they don't want to be vulnerable about. What have you noticed? Visionaries, influencers, entrepreneurs, messengers. What have you noticed with them that they're afraid to share about typically?
Yeah, I think, that we all struggle, like most of us at least, have the challenges, right? And the days where we want to give up. And I actually did a post, maybe a month or so ago, where I
Mm-hmm.
shared about how I, had that moment of like, I just felt like I wanted to just throw in the towel. And then I realized that again, it comes back to like your why, and knowing that it's not about me, and that there's people out there who need what I have to offer,
Mm-hmm.
and you get through it, and it's that roller coaster. But I think that that's something a lot of entrepreneurs probably like have like struggles with, or fears of admitting the challenges, right? That like how hard it is, and that there's days where you do want to just give up, and you wonder if what you're doing is really making an impact, or like the real journey of an entrepreneur.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. How do you feel that vulnerability is how do you feel like the evolution of vulnerability is in our society, in our culture, and that we're in Southern California? So just from what you've seen, what have you noticed with vulnerability, and what do you see in the future with vulnerability and its evolution?
Yeah, well, I think that, with social media, it's gotten, I mean, I think we're all inundated with people's posts all the time that are mostly not very vulnerable. People
Mm-hmm.
just posting lots of pretty pictures of their relationships and their vacations and their life. And, and it seems like everything is so great. And then you hear something, and you're like, at least for me, I had a friend that, I found out that, they had broken up, and I was completely shocked, because I'm like, I never saw anything
Mm.
negative on Facebook ever about
Right.
them. And, and I'm so sure there's so many of those stories, right? And
Mm.
so, I think one of the great things about podcasting is that it's a medium that, people are hopefully being able, we can be more vulnerable, I think, and feel like safe to share what's really going on. And
Mm.
so, I hope that, and that's my intention with my podcast, is to bring more of that vulnerability back into the world, because we need it. That's what
Mm.
creates that connection. And I think we're also connection deprived, really, even though we have the ability in a way to connect to people more easily than we ever have. And yet I don't know if we're really fully utilizing, that resource.
No. What do you think? What do you think would be a good action or way? Like, how will you do or be when you launch your podcast that will promote, that will invite, that will create more vulnerability? Like, what do you think would? How will you add value in that process of vulnerability? What does that look like? What kind of things would you ask your guests about, or what would be your objective with that to make it valuable and a great experience, or for the audience, have them want to keep tuning in?
Yeah, I think, you gave a good model of it through being vulnerable yourself, right? So I know that that's the thing that it's, we teach what we need to learn. And I think that, it's challenging for me as well. And so having to step into more vulnerability, right? Being willing to be even more vulnerable than, in a way it's like, wow, I put this whole book out there of my whole life. And yet sometimes it can still be like, wow, I'm still quote unquote hiding, or, like noticing where there's still fears. And because it is a journey, we're never done, right? And so, I know it starts with me being willing to be vulnerable, but then also, I've got like a question that I feel like is going to be unique to my show, or at least the way I say it, about like, what's your naked truth? What's the thing that, makes you feel naked when you share it? Maybe it's something I would love to have someone say something that they've never shared before, with anyone, or just something that is really kind of scary for them to share, that makes them feel naked.
So at this point, Joy, what's your naked truth?
Well, to be honest, the thing I shared earlier is something I've never shared before.
Wow.
And like out loud, like outside of my head. Right. And maybe, at least, or, maybe outside of my private, like relationship, like with my boyfriend or something, like, right. But yeah, and just a mass scale, like I've never shared that. So, so that was a big thing.
Okay. What about something else?
Okay, you want something else?
Well, I can count that, but now we're at a new point in the interview, and like I wanted to use your question with you. I wanted you to get the satisfaction of receiving that question.
Oh, okay. You're so nice. You're so kind. What is? I don't know. I think that I feel like it's hard because I don't have a lot of things that I haven't shared, in some way, but
I can give it a shot. I don't know what I'm going to share, but
okay.
I'll take the pressure off you. You think about something.
All right.
A naked truth for me, and this is something I haven't shared before. Is that the essence of it? Something I haven't shared before, or is it just something that I've been dealing with recently?
Well, it could be either something you've never shared or just something that makes you feel vulnerable and naked.
Okay, so since I haven't had a girlfriend for that long, it's been about 5 months, and it feels like a long time. But in terms of my life, I went 6 years without having a girlfriend, had another one for like 2 months, and it was like awesome. We learned a lot and got to know about each other, and it was a good growth opportunity. And then we went our separate ways, and then about 2 years later, I meet my current girlfriend. So one of the things that I was always worried about was never being financially successful enough, or adequate enough, or capable enough. I'm not set. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready. That was always in the background of my mind. As soon as I got into entrepreneurship 5.5 years ago, I was like, I don't want a girlfriend yet because I don't have enough time to dedicate to her. I don't have enough money to make her happy. I don't have enough. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready. And so my girlfriend now shows up to 5 months ago, and judging by where I was there, I would say I probably still didn't feel that way. But like being confronted with that throughout the relationship, because I still hadn't really gotten to the root of that and dealt with that. Like on camera, I'm great. Love, being interviewed and doing interviews and asking people questions and being on stage. Like that stuff is like, at this point, I don't want to say it's performing, but it is at a certain level. It's being willing to show up and however it turns out, just trust that it's going to work out. But with my girlfriend, like, she sees right through when I'm not like empowered, when I'm not fulfilled, when I'm hiding, when I'm running, when I'm scared, when I'm numbing, when I'm doing all these things. And it's scary for me to have someone so close to me, like who's so close to my weaknesses, my deepest fears, and to keep letting her in. Like, every time I am uncomfortable with her, like, I want to close back up. I want to be like, and then distance myself. And it's happened just in the last couple of weeks, like multiple times, where I felt there was this big distance. And she even said to me the other night, she's like, yeah, I was worried there that, I wasn't going to get you back. And I was like, oh my God, like, I made you feel like that? Like, it was like that bad. But it's just like really scary, has been, to let someone in that close to like your deepest self. And like, when I closed up, I would turn into this kind of like procrastinate, hide out in my room, not make calls for to get people, enroll people into my program, sales calls, not put out content, just do like the bare minimum to kind of keep the facade up on social media kind of thing.
Right.
And it really started, like, I could feel the rift widening in our relationship, and I'm like, fuck, I really have to do something about this. So we like dug into it and confronted it, and it's still a daily process, like digging into it and confronting it. But that's something I've never shared before, and it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah, well, again, I appreciate you for sharing that. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I can relate to that as well. And, again, I think it goes back to, we're so afraid of being rejected. And yet I think what we really want is we want to be loved. Like, we want to be able to be completely ourselves, to be, in our weaknesses and our, and be loved, right? Yeah. And still have that person be there and see like our faults and not just our like the pretty part of us. And it's like we actually want that, but it's scary because we have that fear. But when you're able to show that part of yourself and have that partner not leave and love you even more for it, I mean, that's really all we want, right? So yeah.
Thank you. What's your naked truth?
It's like, maybe he'll forget. And so the next question. Well, you did make me think of something. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And this is like, it's hard to say. And I think hopefully people can relate to this. So it'll serve other people, because that's, I believe, why we're here. I'm always trying to just say things that aren't just for me, to help other people. But I've had this like fear that I think maybe is common among entrepreneurs, and I don't know about non-entrepreneurs, but just like running out of money, of becoming homeless, and just realizing that like I think that wouldn't ever happen, because I'm like, it's like I would, if I got to that place, like I would figure it out, right? Like if I had to decide between being homeless and figuring it out, like I'm going to figure it out, so just realizing how that is just not a real fear, like most of our fears are, but like, it can have feel like it has so much power and weight. And I think that's the thing, is that when we're willing to just share what we're scared of, like sharing, it loses its power just by sharing it. Sometimes it's like, you don't even have to do anything. It's in the sharing of it that like, it no longer has that power over you.
Yeah, that's so true. Just the other day, I was working with my business partner, and I got confronted by a lot of stuff. I had a bunch of stuff come up, and so he's just said, write down whatever is coming up for you. What are the thoughts? What are the feelings, emotions that are coming up for you? So someone listening right now, if you get confronted, write it down on a piece of paper, and then share it with someone, and have them explain to you why it's ridiculous. What are your thoughts just
Right.
like they can like, I don't want to say validate it, but they can listen to it and say, I get how you can think that, and come on, don't you see that you're brilliant? Don't you see that you're capable? Don't you see that you're, one sale away from abundance or whatever it might be? And he did that for me. I listed out everything, and we went through line by line, and he just like logically went over, how that's ridiculous. So maybe logic works for you. Maybe you just want someone to listen as you say it. Like you said, it's just in the sharing of it that can release its power over you. But I think that's a really, really great exercise for anyone who wants one.
Yeah. Well, I got another one if you want.
Yes, please, please.
But this is something I have shared before, but not like really to the general public, but actually so my dad, both my parents actually had cancer, and I took care of them. But when my dad was sick, I had thoughts of killing him, and not like, I don't think it was malicious. It was because he was in so much pain that I like wanted him to not be in pain, right? But it scared me. I'm like, I've never had a thought about killing my dad before. So I got on a call with one of my mentors, and I was just talking about, what was going on. And she's like, okay, I want you to pick one of the thoughts that you're having, and let's, talk about it. And so I chose that one, and she's like, okay, good. I'm glad you chose that one, because I probably would have encouraged you to choose that one. And so, we talked about it. We just talked about like where I felt that thought in my body, and, and just feeling it. And it was just, it was amazing, because that's all that I needed to do, was to just share it and to give that feeling, that thought, like space, and instead of, because when we just keep it inside of ourselves, that's when diseases happen. I mean, really, like every emotion that gets trapped in our body, they don't just go away. I mean, they manifest, as diseases. So, so that's another reason why it's really important for us to be willing to share those thoughts, that we have, that, instead of judging them, just speaking it, but making sure that you have someone, obviously, that you can speak it to, that is a safe person, like in the sense that they aren't going to judge you. They're just going to hold that space, for you to share.
Right. Wow. That's powerful. Joy, amazing suggestion and exercise. So as far as vulnerability, is there anything else that we really need to know to be able to tap into that power, to tap into the growth, to the evolution of ourselves with vulnerability?
Not that I can think of. I mean, like I said, it's really an ongoing practice, right? So there's no destination. It's not like, okay, when I get to this place, I'm just going to be completely like fine talking about everything with people, and like, I don't know that it's really just an ongoing journey. But I think that's a good way to see, like, what am I afraid to share? What would be really scary? And I've definitely posted things on Facebook and then been like, okay, I'm going to log off now, and, like, not go on for a long time because I don't want to see like the response, right?
Yep.
And that's when you're like, okay, well, I guess sometimes I don't know, for me, sometimes I don't even realize like how much something might scare me until I've done it. And then I'm like, oh, wow, like I have a lot of fear now. Like that actually was kind of scary,
I'm curious, do you think, because sharing on Facebook Live, I've noticed, tends to be this kind of cathartic, therapeutic way to release our fear over something. Do you think that is the most powerful, or do you think sharing it one-on-one with someone, is that more scary? Is that more vulnerable? Like in person, is that better than over the phone or over video or over Facebook Live? Do you have any kind of gauge on what is more vulnerable or less vulnerable?
Yeah, I would say, so I think that, in person is more powerful if you could do it in person, although for some people, that might be actually easier, right? Because on Facebook Live, if you put it out in the public, you don't know. You get to see the numbers, but you have no idea. There's a lot of people kind of lurking around that never actually like it,
Right.
And all of a sudden they might say, it's so funny because I actually, who was I? Oh, I was on a phone call with someone who that I'm going to end up being on her podcast, but we were just kind of talking to see if I would be a good fit. And so she told me that she had seen one of my Facebook Lives, and I was like, oh, okay. So you just never know, like sometimes who's watching until they actually might tell you. But so that could be, definitely scarier for people. But generally, I think it's more powerful when you're able to do it in person.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the in-person is like, it takes more courage. There's no barriers between you. And I also know that there's a multiplying factor of like your energy and who people know you as, because we're like, we operate out of the conversations in our head of who we know ourselves as and who we think other people see us as, right? Like how does this person see me? Okay, that's a function of how I show up a little bit. It's like how my dad sees me is kind of how I show up, because I think how he sees me is, whatever, like irresponsible or whatever. And so I show up in that way, or I show up defending that. I show up defending I'm not irresponsible, or I show up trying to cover up that I'm irresponsible because I think he thinks I'm irresponsible. So I think that there's an aspect of when we shift people's conversations about us, it literally changes our energy dynamic of ourselves and our own conversations and our connections with these people. So I think, honestly, I think it could be both. If you share something with one person that was really, really, really difficult with that one person, but if you shared it on Facebook Live, it's like, okay, you shared it on Facebook Live, but it really didn't deal with the person who's at issue in the vulnerability and the share about vulnerability, because vulnerability and fear can cover all kinds of different areas. It could be a relationship with one person, it could be a relationship with a group, it could be a relationship with ourselves. So I think, if you share it one-on-one with someone like your dad or your mom or a family member or whatever it might be, that would be very difficult, because those are very, very entrenched relationships typically in how we see each other, depending on the level of communication with the family. I think everyone's different. I know with me and my parents, like, I always feel like it's difficult to talk to them, difficult for them to get me, and difficult for me to share. But that's, again, I think there's probably something about how I think they see me that causes me to have a challenge with sharing with them. Versus when it comes to sharing online, yes, it's difficult, and there's things that I worry about, my reputation, clients, all that kind of stuff, like, that I'm concerned about. But I think depending on what the issue is that we share or are vulnerable about, that can determine what is going to be harder or easier.
Right. Yeah, I forget who said this, but I heard it said that, basically there's multiple like versions of ourselves out there, because every person, that we know, like, they have a version of us, because they, they have an idea of who you are. And so, it's kind of similar to what you were saying.
Yeah, and when we change that version in many people's minds, we can catapult ourselves to a whole new level of success, a whole new level of results, a whole new level of self-expression, a whole new level of owning ourselves and who we are. So I think it's just fascinating. This topic is juicy.
Yeah,
right.
I love the title, by the way.
Yes. So again, like, how is vulnerability sexy? Let's like wrap it up with that. What makes it sexy?
I mean, besides the sexy photo of me, right?
That's right. Naked, sexy photo of you. Exactly.
I think it's attractive because it goes back to that connection, right? I think we are naturally drawn to people that are real. We tend to get turned off by people who aren't real, right? Like, we're just, so that's what I think as far as how vulnerability is sexy.
Beautiful. So it creates attraction, it creates closeness, it tears down the walls, and we're attracted to people who are like us. And I think when we feel the pain of other people, when we feel the hardship, when we relate to people, oh my gosh, this person's suffering similar to me. I'm not alone in my suffering. They might be suffering with a different thing or under a different challenge or pain or whatever it might be. But it creates like relatability. We want to help those who are hurt. Like, there's a natural affinity to want to send love, to want to connect more, to want to nurture, to want to nourish, to want to build that bond, to strengthen this person. Because like, there's I've seen this analogy where in the general population, on a scale of 1 to 10, if people are like absolutely miserable, about to die at 1, and 10 is ecstatic and overjoyed and just high on life, right? Mm-hmm. Most people operate at 3 to 7 or 4 to 6 or something like that, in kind of this middle spectrum. of mediocrity. And when someone goes above that in our general population, maybe not personal development because we're more aware, but still I think it happens. When someone's really excited and amazing and high on life and inspired, people who are mediocre are like, come on, calm down. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you so happy?
Right.
Like, what the heck? Versus on the other side of the spectrum, if people are hurting and they're miserable and they're suffering, people want to go tend to those people and make sure that they're okay and get them back up, lift their spirits back up to where everyone else is. Come on, you got it's not so bad. Like, can't you see it like this? And we get them back into that place of comfortability. So that zone of mediocrity is just so fascinating. I think that I don't remember where I was going with it, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Well, yeah, and I think like it's just like you said. I mean, the people want, we want people to kind of stay with, like, be like us in a way, right? Yes. So if we're in that 3 to 7 and someone else is at a 10, we want to bring them down to that 3 to 7, and a lot of times it's not even conscious. We don't even know it, right? But it's like, yeah. So, and then the same thing, if they're at a 1, we want to bring them up to between that 3 and 7, because that's where we're at, Yeah. That's why who you surround yourself is so important, like
so critical.
If you want to be at a 10 and you're surrounding yourself with 3 to 7s, it's really challenging. Like, but if you're always around 10s, like, you're naturally going to be a 10 just because of the energy of the people around you,
Yes. Awesome, Joy. So we're beginning to wrap up now. Any final thoughts? And after that, we can go into how does our audience, how does our listener or viewer right now stay connected with you? What do we want them to do next?
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple free gifts. So if you go to my website, which is joiecheng.com, I'm sure your audience loves free things, right?
Yes.
So if you go to my site, you will find 2 things. One is the 7-day self-love challenge. So if you are struggling with self-love, I mean, I think we all could use more self-love. It's not something we're ever a master at, even myself. And so there's always room for improvement and growth. So if you go there, you can sign up for my 7-day self-love challenge. And when you sign up, you'll get a different email every day with a different practice of self-love. And these are the practices that, basically saved my life and have helped my clients as well. So they're super powerful, really simple. Doesn't mean it necessarily is easy to implement, but with, consistency over time, everything is possible. So, and then the other thing is for anyone who is, watching or listening, who is thinking, maybe there is a story inside of me that, really needs to be shared with the world. I've inspired you because
there is a story.
Yes,
take it out, bring it out. Let Joy help you bring it out.
I believe that. So yes, if you have a story, if you're inspired, if you're like, I know that there's something that needs to be shared, then I would love to get on the phone with you. So you can go to my site and you can schedule a complimentary clarity breakthrough call.
Beautiful. Awesome. Joy, you're a superstar. Everyone definitely stay connected with this powerhouse. Earlier in the interview, I was, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of daydreaming while you were speaking, and in a good way. I was like, oh my gosh, imagine where Joy and I are going to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, because we're doing this work now, and you're like brilliant. I just feel your energy, your great energy, and all the possibilities that you're igniting in yourself and the people around you. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like the future is so bright for us and what we're capable of and what we're creating. Yeah. So I really acknowledge you for being the light that you are in the world and just being yourself and being the naked truth that you are.
Thank you. And thank you for challenging me.
Yes.
It definitely is. Like, you made me step up my game, and I hope that it served me, and I hope it served other people too. But thank you for, and it got me more excited about my podcast, because I was like, wow, this is, when you see your vision kind of come to life in real time, it's exciting. So thank you.
I love that. Asking you the question that is going to be your hallmark. I got to ask the question before anyone.
Yes. You got you popped the naked truth question version thing, right? Like the.
I love it. And by the way, you did mention that, serving our audience, for anyone who listened to this, who, you felt like you were touched by either Joy's or my sharing, please feel free to reach out to either one of us, leave us a comment, connect with us. for anything that we shared, or if you're going through your own challenging thing that you feel nobody really gets, nobody's able to listen to you or hold that space for you. And I'm sure we would both be more than happy to do that for you and hold that space for you, because we know what it's like to feel alone and like nobody gets us.
Yeah. And that's my big mission, passion, is just so that people know that it's totally normal to have this human experience, to be going through challenges, and that the more we're able to just reach out and share, then the less alone we all will feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you reach out to Joy and myself, you become your greatest possible self. So Joy, thank you so much for being on here today. You're a superstar. I love the conversation. I love the realness. I love going deep, and keep doing the amazing work and creation that you're doing. And I'm excited to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again for having me on the show.
Awesome, Joy. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.